After a stupid amount of playtime speedrunning the game, I was finally able to beat the game and get all 3 different endings to unlock the 3 secret classes of the game. Now, I'm not going to go too in-depth about how to get these classes, and definitely not going to spoil the ending of each one of them, so you guys can experience it all for yourself if you actually end up deciding to grind out each of these classes. So before we get into the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content related to Lords of the Fallen. Okay, getting right into it, here we are trying to find out if playing the game in different ways is truly worth doing for these starter classes, because at the end of the day, it really is just a starter class. You've already made your character and beaten the game, so why get a new starter class anyways? Well, for starters, the New Game Plus system isn't your standard New Game Plus as other games have. This one really makes the enemies about 3 times harder, and there are no vestiges anywhere, meaning you can't fast travel or rest at anywhere besides using the vestige seeds, which you can only place one of those at a time. So if you place a second one, your last one fully disappears. So then, with the insane difficulty of New Game Plus, some people might want to avoid that but want to replay the game again. Which in this case, then yes, farming for these secret classes is definitely worth it for you if you want to just replay the game some more. But let's go more in depth over these classes to see which ones are truly worth it and which ones you should probably just avoid. Starting off, we will be going over the Lord class. This is your starter Inferno build that's basically just on crack. It starts you out with the Lord's Axe, which is a giant axe weapon that has a huge amount of damage starting off. You can easily go and 1 to 2 shot most of the mobs with absolute ease. And since it's a bigger weapon, you get so much more poise and posture damage, allowing you to stagger enemies a lot easier, which is great for early to mid game. You also get the Lord's Catalyst, which is more of just a basic Inferno Catalyst, but it's great for the spells that you get, which of course we will be going over those a little bit later. On top of all that, you also get the full Lord's Armor set, which is a mix between medium and heavy armor, giving you a huge defense boost right off the start of the game, making you extremely tanky. But all these things seem pretty heavy, right? Does that mean we will be fat rolling, because then this will kind of suck? And the answer to that is actually no, purely because of the 2 rings you will get starting out, which are absolutely huge. Those being the Ring of Bones, which gives you an increased maximum equip load, and then the Ring of Duty, giving you an increase in your vigor and endurance, allowing you to still be able to medium weight category, which is huge for a starting class. Having those 2 end game rings is wild. On top of this end game armor set and weapon is actually kinda nutty. As for these spells you get, there's 3 of them, which all of them are actually all end game spells. So let's go over those each individually. Starting off with the Inferno weapon, this buffs your weapon with fire damage, which, as we know, for the first area, a lot of the enemies are kind of resistant to fire, but even this buff on top of the Lord's Axe you got, most regular mobs will just drop in a single hit, and fighting up against bosses like Pieta makes it a cakewalk with that extra fire damage. The second spell that you get is called Adir's Endurance, which is actually very broken. This spell makes it so you get more stamina regen, and this spell is absolutely no joke. It about triples your normal stamina regen, allowing you to essentially have no downtime whenever it comes to dodging. Running out of stamina? Wait half a second and then it's fully refilled. This alone is another insane buff that will help immensely at the start of the game, and honestly, throughout the entirety of your game. And for the final spell that you get, it's called Infernal Slash, which you pull out 2 fire axes and slash forward, doing huge damage. Another endgame spell for massive damage at the start of the game. I think you're starting to see a pattern with how strong this class really is. The class even starts out at level 23, which is around 10 levels higher than all the other starting classes, so you can skip a bit of the early game grind. The stats are pretty decent too, 12 strength, 8 agility, 13 endurance and vitality, which actually boost up to 14 each because of your rings, 8 radiance, and then a whopping 22 inferno. All in all, I would say this starter class is 100% worth getting. It's going to let you get through that early and mid game with ease. It's honestly more so a handicap at this point with how easy it's going to make your game. It's always good starting off strong, so let's go into a lesser note with the Putrid Child starting class. And I gotta say, it's a little bit lackluster. It's without a doubt super cool and a great starter class for a quality build, but let's go over a few things really quick. This secret class feels more so like a normal starting class with its low starting level of only 15. It's got 8 levels in strength and dexterity, 10 endurance, 12 vitality, and then 15 in both radiance and inferno. This class clearly is lacking in strength and dex to really wield any other weapons that you find, so it's trying to focus more on spells, and the spells are super broken then, right? Right? Okay, before getting ahead of ourselves, and before getting into the spells once again, let's go over the gear. It starts off with the Putrid Child's sword, which is a fast short sword that does wither damage, which is nice, but it's not too strong since none of your stats are really all that high. That's the downside of quality builds. If a weapon doesn't scale with everything, the weapon's just kind of meh. Along with that sword, you also have the Putrid Child Catalyst, pretty standard and basic catalyst, and then of course the full Putrid Child set, which is actually super cool looking, but it's all light armor, so your resistances are going to be pretty meh as well. On the plus side, this class does get a super cool starting pendant though, which is the Pendant of Parting. Basically, it makes it so there's a chance to spawn an orb that damages enemies when you kill them with something that does wither damage. The orb does do like 100 to 200 damage on enemies who touch it, which is cool, but it definitely is more of a gimmick than something that's super viable. It's pretty cool and useful whenever you kill a crowd of enemies though, so I will give it that. Alright, as for the spells we start off with, the first one is called Diminishing Missile. This umbral spell summons a slow moving projectile that does very low damage, but it does shred the opponent's defenses, so your other attacks can hit harder. It's honestly not too amazing. I wouldn't really recommend using this on normal mobs, but on bosses, it definitely can be very nice. The second spell that you get is called Lingering Despair, which basically this one spawns several stationary orbs that do pretty decent damage when enemies touch them. The only downside is that it's very awkward trying to get enemies to step in them, since they're more like traps than an actual like projectile. But using them at the right distance and the right angle, you can kinda shock and blast a spell into an enemy for a huge amount of damage, so honestly, it does have the potential to be very strong. And as for the very last spell that you get, it is called Putrefaction. This one pretty much just spawns a poison cloud on the ground and enemies inside it get poisoned over time. But the poison tick is so low, only hitting for 14 damage a second on this enemy here, and it didn't even last long enough to finish them. On top of enemies need to be standing in the smoke for quite some time for it to proc it, so using this on enemies who move around is basically pointless. Honestly, this Putrid Child class was a huge letdown. It definitely is the hardest one to get with the most steps and needing to kill a few NPCs for it, and for all that effort, you get some mid-quality build class. It's just kind of sad. I would without a doubt say that the Putrid Child class is just not worth it. But you know what is worth it? The Radiant Purifier. This starting class is simply amazing to use. You start out at level 22 with some pretty nice stat spread, 12 strength, 10 agility, 13 endurance, 14 vitality, and a nice 18 radiance. It's basically like the starting out with the normal Orion Preacher class, but it's just 10 levels higher and with some insane starter gear and spells. Starting with the weapon you get is the Radiant Purifier Polearm. This thing is crazy with a high starting damage and a fast moveset. You can pretty much just run through your entire game with this weapon alone if you wanted to. Its running heavy attack one-shots all these starting mobs with ease and has a fast moveset, so if there's anything that doesn't die in that one hit, you will just be able to beat them down no problem. On top of that, you do also get the Radiant Purifier Catalyst, which is one of the stronger catalysts in the game. It has less spell slots, but scales better down the line compared to some of the other catalysts, so it too could be potentially used through your entire playthrough. The armor you get is the Radiant Purifier armor, which has like a mix between light armor, and then you also get these heavy gauntlets, giving you a bit of defense with your agile movement. You also start with the Empyrean Pendant, which gives you increased holy damage and holy defense, which is actually huge for starting out the game. But honestly, these spells are the big ones with this class that make it so insane. For starters, you get the Piercing Light spell. That is a mid-game spell that shoots a radiant projectile that does absolutely insane damage. Having this from frame 1 of the game can carry you super far easily into endgame, because this spell is one of the greatest spells in the game. The second spell you get is called Aura of Tenacity, which at the cost of some of your mana per second, you gain a buff that makes you take a significantly less amount of damage. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need a little more tankiness, then this spell goes absolutely hard. The final spell that you get is called Healing Sigil, which is nice as it can heal you and your allies in the radius, but for the mana cost to healing ratio, I wouldn't really be using it that much. Only for a last ditch effort if you really are desperate for that healing. Regardless of having some health sustain besides your regular heals, it can still be very nice. So overall, I would 100% without a doubt say that this secret class is fully worth it. It basically just hands you all this endgame gear and spells at the start of the game, and you wouldn't even have to do much to your build if you want to run through the entire game fast. Alright, so a quick little recap on each of the classes. The Lord and the Radiant Purifier class are stupidly amazing and powerful. Using either of these is basically, like I said earlier, kind of like playing with a handicap because they will carry you through the game no problem. But the Putrid Child, as it isn't necessarily a bad class, just comparing it to the other two and the extra process it takes to unlock it, I can't really justify saying that it's worth it. It's just too similar to the other basic classes and just as mid as the rest. It's like, why would you even want to grind this out if there's nothing really benefiting from it? So then that is my thoughts on the 3 secret classes. What do you guys think about all the classes? Are they worth the time and effort of getting, or do you think you're just going to avoid them because there's no point in doing another playthrough? Then let me know if you guys have even gotten any of the classes yet and played them yourselves and what you think about them so far. Anyways, that's going to do it from me, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my future uploads on Lords of the Fallen. So I'm going to head out now. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, then have a good one. Peace.